Is this still one of the best Windows gaming devices out there, or is it lackluster because of the burning micro SD card issue, which, by the way, they actually fixed, but no one's really talking about that. Let's get into that and so much more in the latest episode of Decked Up, a gaming and tech podcast. Hello, everyone. This is Mekel Kasanova, host of Decked Up, a gaming and tech podcast. And today we're going to be talking about 6 months later with the ROG Ally. This is one of my absolute favorite devices of 2023. And I was one of the staunch defenders of it when everyone was saying that this was a failed product. And so many people were like, oh, you're paid, you're a shill, this and that, all this because I kept saying that I love this device, even though it had the micro SD card issue. And the funny thing is, I was being called that when I wasn't even sent a review unit by ASUS. So it's crazy. All that being said, though, I do love this device. It's absolutely great. It's probably one of the most smallest and powerful handheld devices out there. I know we got the Steam Deck OLED and people love that. I don't have one personally, and I don't have interest in buying one either. It's like I'm perfectly fine with this and the Lego, so it's what it is, right? But I want to talk about how this thing is 6 months later, how it's held up with all the patches and software and even the revisions, that have fixed the micro SD card issue, which no longer is a thing. But we're going to talk about all that and so much more. But before we do all that, if you're watching this on YouTube, do all the stuff that YouTube likes. If you're listening to it in audio format, then do the stuff that Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, whatever platform you're listening to. Make sure you like the podcast, share it around, leave some feedback, and we can go from there. And all that being said, before we dive further into it, I know this is probably going to be very annoying, but there's a time slot right here if you want to skip this next part, but we got to keep the lights on, right? So this video is sponsored by none other than EWIN Racing. So let's go ahead and hear a word from this video sponsor. I wanted to take some time today to talk about why I think you need to pick up this chair, the EWIN Racing Champion Series chair. Before we get into this video, if you want to pick up this chair at an extremely good discount, then make sure you use the code that's going to be on the screen right here. The link down in the description below that takes you to the site to purchase the chair, and just throw in the code and there you go. So all that being said, let's talk about this chair. So look, brace yourselves. This is just not another gaming chair. It's a throne for kings and queens of gaming. I've lounged in this bad boy for almost a year and it hasn't cracked or given out under the pressure of my weight at all. And I'm not a small guy. I'm a big guy. I'm 6'2". I'm 208 pounds. But when I had this chair initially, I was 6'2" and I was 290 pounds. So that's a lot of weight that's sitting on this chair. And almost a year later, it's still holding up. And I have to say, when it comes to the weight of this chair, it is definitely heftier than my old gaming chair. But the weight, it just screams quality. From the polyurethane armrest to the memory foam embracing every curve of your back. All right, so let's talk about the juicy details, features, and specs. Now, the armrests, you can slide them and rotate them. You can lift them with the 4D adjustable setup. As far as height adjustability, it's got an easy lever, so you're soaring up or you're sinking down. It's got a recline to relax feature, so if you want to have a fancy power nap, you can do that. You can go from 85 to 155 degrees with another handy lever. You can also utilize tilt control, so, because sometimes you just want to rock. It's sturdy with a durable steel frame and 120 millimeter class 4 gas lift that can support up to a whopping 400 pounds. The base, well, it's made out of aluminum 5-star wonder. It's got you anchored. Now, how's the ride? Rolling around, silky smooth on both carpets and hardwood. Adjusting, everything is at your fingertips. Whether I'm reclining for a quick siesta or adjusting for a marathon gaming session, this chair didn't just meet expectations, it obliterated them. Alright, so wrapping everything up, here are my final thoughts on the EWIN Racing Champion Series chairs. If you're serious about your gaming and, more importantly, your comfort, this chair isn't just an option. It's the choice. All right. So 6 months later with the ROG Ally, this device to me gave me everything that I wanted the Steam Deck to be. And this isn't going to be Steam Deck versus the ROG Ally because I feel like that was done to death and that conversation got real old. But my irritations with the Steam Deck was that I got tired of tinkering and having to work with all these different other ways, proton layers, and all this to get games I wanted that weren't on Steam, and even ones that were on Steam to work. And so with this, literally, I have everything that I need to do right here. Like if I want to play Epic Games, I can just play it on here. If I want to play games that have the anti-cheat built into them and not have to worry about, the account getting blocked or banned, I can just do so with that. If I want to play literally anything on here, and I can dock this to an eGPU and I can make this such a powerhouse of a device. Now, we have to talk about a lot of the things that this came with, right? A lot of the things that made this better was the fact that it had the a lot of people don't think this is much, but the fact that it has Hall effect triggers on it for the LT and RT or left and right trigger was really phenomenal. I personally love it because I felt like it made every shot and every time I ADS or aim down sights feel that much, just crisper. Like I didn't feel any type of issues with that. I just question if you're going to put Hall effect triggers in, why don't you put Hall effect sticks in here? Now, you could upgrade this and put your own Hall effect sticks in it, but I mean, I've had this for 6 months. I haven't had any type of stick drift, and I do use this daily. This and the Lego, I swap between those daily, along with my Switch as well, and even my PlayStation Portal. So, I'm constantly using all these devices at home, and I've never once run into any issue with this having stick drift. So, you know, there's that. But the D-pad was one of the things. I know some people say they don't really like the D-pad, but I think it has the best D-pad between it, the Steam Deck, as well as the I can't even talk, the Lenovo Legion Go, because for me, I always say this, when I want to benchmark a D-pad, I have to put it up against fighting games and platformers, and when it goes to going up on a fighting game, I need to test this with King of Fighters because that is the fighting game that has some of the most hellacious inputs. Anything SNK has some really hellacious inputs that you have to know, which, I'm gonna throw some terms out there. It may go over some folks' head, but quarter circle back, down, quarter circle forward, pretzel input, figure eights and such like that. That's the type of inputs you're going to be doing on a D-pad for various characters. One of my favorite characters to use in a fighting game is Kyo Kusanagi from KOF, and he does what's called Rekka punches or chain punches. So you have to do these type of inputs up to 3 times with button inputs to be able to perform one of his chain punch combinations. And so this D-pad out of all 3 devices is the one where I have no missed inputs whatsoever. Everything that I want to do literally just it's off like that. Like it literally is like butter. Platformers, absolute joy to play on this thing. And then I want to talk about the buttons too, because I know people were saying when they originally had this in some of the initial reviews, or people are saying the buttons would stick. I've never had the issue of the button sticking for me, like whatsoever. These buttons have been pristine from Jump Street. Like I've literally had no issues with them at all. And I've never had them stick. They're actually very nicely. And granted, I do feel that the Steam Deck does have probably slightly better buttons in the sense of like how they feel overall, the actuation of this, I think is perfectly serviceable. I don't have, I can't really knock it for something that it's not doing because it's doing everything that I want to do. So the D-pad's good, the sticks are really good, the buttons are good, the bumpers and the triggers are really good. The screen, we got to talk about the screen too. It's got a 1080p screen, 120 hertz with variable refresh rate. I almost tripped up saying that. I was like, VRR. It's a variable refresh rate. And here's the thing. This is a great feature to have because of the fact that there are games that will like float between varying refresh rates, and because it has the VRR, especially if you can set the refresh rate to unlimited, it'll just flow back and forth. Like you won't notice the stutters, or you won't notice them as much, right? And the other thing too is you can turn RSR on this if you want to sharpen the graphics. Basically, it upscales the image of it, lowers image to a higher quality, and also in a way kind of saves a little battery life. But I personally don't turn on RSR. Like I'm never. I guess that can be the other thing we can talk about here too. The battery life on this. I'll come back to the screen. Let's quickly go over to battery life. Battery life on this for me has been okay. I'm never out and about with this, so it's never an issue. I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, it's a handheld. It should be portable. I should have a very long lasting battery." If you want a long lasting battery, I'm going to just tell you to go get the Steam Deck OLED. You're not going to get that with this, just because with this, literally, if you're playing at the mid performance level, or performance setting, then it's which is roughly 15 watts. If you're going to play on that, then you're probably going to burn through your battery in like an hour to an hour and a half. That again depends on what you're playing. Personally, I like to float between silent mode, performance, and then just all the way, just unlocked at 25 or 30 watts. And typically I do that when I have that plugged in. But for most games I'm playing, and I like to play a lot of, platformers and lower end games, indie games and such, fan made games. So like if I'm playing something like Shadows of Adam or Sea of Stars, or if I'm playing Chrono Cross or Chrono Trigger, or if I'm playing literally, The Messenger, I'm throwing stuff out there, or The Last Faith, or those type of games, then I'm going to be playing this at silent setting, and that's going to ensure that I have a decent amount of battery life, so I can probably crank out roughly 2 hours, 2.5 hours, or more, especially if it's a really low end indie game. I can probably get 2.5 hours or more, which is fine for me. I'm home. I'm a full time dad, stay at home dad. So I've got my kid with me all the time. So she's watching herself on TV. I can be, play this. And when battery dies, just plug it in and, just go from there. Or if it even does die, because I never really let it get to a point where the battery dies. But that's the biggest thing for a lot of folks, especially if you're going to be playing higher end AAA games. That's when you're probably going to run into the issue. Cyberpunk 2077. It's not a game I play, but that's, you got to talk about the trending AAA titles. So something like that probably get you 45 minutes on this with this battery life. If you're going to play The Witcher 3, you're probably going to get an hour and a half on medium to high settings on that game. Um, let's see, Halo Infinite. If you're gonna run that, or Redfall, if you're gonna play, I know I mentioned Redfall. A lot of people are gonna laugh. I actually like that game. Or if you're gonna play Starfield or anything like that, then probably 45 minutes to an hour. Um, at performance or the highest TDP setting that you can put this on. So there's that. Battery life, it's probably between this, the Lego or Lenovo Legion Go, and the Steam Deck, and more so the Steam Deck OLED. This has the weakest battery life for AAA gaming. But I don't know. For me, it's not really an issue. I'm going to be using this as I do at home when I'm constantly around something to plug it into. So for me, it's not an issue. For you, that may be. So take that into consideration. Going back to the screen though, 1080p screen, VRR, variable refresh rate, right? Most of the games that you're going to play, I do recommend playing them at like 720p, and then probably turn on RSS and then FSR2. And then from there, you know, you're going to have really good performance overall. And that's kind of a, I feel like that's the best settings that you can throw that at, to have everything that you want running the, at a very smooth rate, plus the, the upscaling with RSS, but or RSR rather, sorry. The upscaling effect that has, I think that works perfectly fine for it. A lot of games, when you're trying to play them at 1080p at 60 or above, you're going to run into some issues with it. Not everything is going to give you a hard time with it. Like, I know Alan Wake remastered struggles, but I just feel like that game is just ultimately not the most it's not the most optimized title, so don't expect that to run that great. Alan Wake 2 runs very well on here, so you don't have to worry about that. Um, I will say that, like, if you're playing Street Fighter 6, for example, 1080p is fine. Just make sure all your graphical settings are low, and then you can run it at 60. I don't recommend running it higher than that. I know some people probably want to push for 120 frames per second, but if you're gonna push for that, make sure you don't do it on battery. Just as a forewarning. Other games like KOF and 15, 13, 14, um, Tekken 7, the if you're gonna play Tekken 8's demo, which is coming up very soon, which I already have on all platforms, benefit of being a Bandai Namco creator. If you want to play those, then perfectly fine. Guilty Gear Strive runs flawlessly. Uh, Everything else that's demanding and very resource heavy, I just wouldn't try to run at 1080p. Resident Evil 4, the remake, you can run that at 1080p. Dead Space, you can run that at 1080p. Um, and those will run 1080p 60. Those are just really well optimized time. Something like the Callisto Protocol, which is a game I enjoy, and I know a lot of people didn't like it. Um, I personally run that at 720p, and I run RSR to um, upscale the image. So there's that. Now, the other thing with this too, we got to talk about is the cooling heatsink type deal, as well as the micro SD card issue. Now, this thing to me doesn't really get hot because the fans kick out. You got dual fans, dual intakes on the back, and dual outtakes. So if you're wondering what this is, it's right here is Mechanism. This is the Ally mate by Mechanism. If you want to pick this up, I will have a link down in the description below. Basically, it gives you a kickstand. You can just, take it on and off. You put this on. If you want to VESA mount this, you can. It's got attachments for that, attachments for additional micro SD cards if you want to use that too. But that's what I use. I always have this on. So yeah, dual intake for heat, and then it pushes it out through the top two vents, and ultimately keeps it cool. A lot of people have complained about the fan noise on it. I personally, I don't know. Maybe it's because I have kids, right? So I've got a 2-year old that's very like loud, running around all the time, right? So for me personally, because I've got her running around, the TV's on, the pets and everything like that, the other kids, to me, it's just not an issue, right? It doesn't do anything to me in the sense of like I find it ultimately very negative. So it to me, I'm like, okay, I hear it, whatever. That's not gonna like break me out of the immersion of the game. What will is if my kid gets herself hurt or something goes wrong in the house around. That will break my immersion. But for all that being said, I don't hit her fans on this, and they don't bother me. Other than that, uh, device stays cool, but the biggest issue for a lot of us for the first 5 months, 4.5 months rather, of the ROG Ally was the fact that it was bricking micro SD cards. And I didn't have that happen for so long until it finally happened to me. And I was like, oh man. this sucks. And for a lot of people, they were saying that that alone was the reason enough for this to be a flawed and failed product. Flawed, I agree with. Failed, I don't. Because if it was completely failed, they would have pulled this off the market entirely, which they never did. Um, I will say I don't like that it took them so long to fix it, and I don't like that the customer service was, I mean, while they were on it with, RMAing your device or sending it out for repairs, they were not very good at being in touch with us to keep us in the know of what's going on. It's pretty much mum's the word. But that was an issue for the first 4.5 months. I know that with the later models that are in stores that are new, they quietly started replacing, parts. So which you can buy in the store now is the revised model that doesn't have that issue. And if you do have a day one or an earlier non-revised unit, you can RMA it and they'll replace it and put the new part in there, or just give you a brand new device in total. I've had mine RMA 3 times. Previously, the previous times it went out, I came back and the micro SD card slot continued to fail. I've had it brick multiple 1 terabyte cards, 512 cards, I'm talking Samsung, Evo cards, Plus cards, SanDisk Ultra and Extreme cards, and even Lexar cards as well. So I've run the gamut of those being bricked before. And then with this one right here, this is back from the third RMA, which only took me about 2 weeks, and they completely changed out the component, which I think they also changed out the heat sink as well, and put thicker thermal pasting and shielding. So because it feels slightly heavier, but and it's not because of the mechanism Ally made, but it's feels slightly heavier. It ultimately has not given me issues with the micro SD card slot since. Now I still have a 512 gig 2230 micro not micro SD SSD M.2 SSD in here. And I do plan when I get time. I just haven't had time, between having COVID, being, sick prior to that too, and just everything going on. My plan is to get an L-shaped adapter, put that in here, put a 4 terabyte drive in, and call it a day. Um, because I think that's going to be more than enough that I personally need. Even though it probably will be overkill, I probably could just put a 32 terabyte card in here. But hey, I want to put I want to put a 4 terabyte. Might as well get the most of it because I'm not the only one who uses this. My wife also uses this as well, and we both float back and forth between this and the Legion Go. Like if I'm using the Legion Go, she's using this. If she's using the Lego, then I'm using this. So that, and also I'll probably get another 1 terabyte card and prop in here, and there we go. We got 5 terabytes of storage. Well, you're gonna say that's overkill, but when you, at least, I would say if you're gonna do an update on this and you want to get more storage, I would always recommend at a minimum a 1 terabyte, but highly pushing towards 2 terabytes because you're gonna want that additional storage space, especially with all the Windows updates and all the other stuff that comes with using a Windows-based device. Those Windows updates eat up a heck of a lot of storage, so keep that in mind. The other thing I want to quickly go over, I know a lot of people dislike the placement of the back triggers here. A lot of people said that they are completely uncomfortable. I don't personally find that to be an issue. Me personally, I find them to be quite comfortable. I mean, if not ergonomic, they're right there. So if I'm in the middle of something and I need to pull up the screen, or if I need to do some type of custom input, I'm not hitting these by accident. You know, most people may hit them by accident. I'm not going to be doing that. I don't have any issues with them. I want to talk about the software for a minute because two sections of that I want to talk about. First, I want to talk about um, Armory Crate and how that has become like the best overlay launcher that is on a Windows device right now. You know, I'm not going to be comparing Armory Crate to SteamOS or that's not comparable. I've seen people do that, not comparable. But what I love about this is the fact it launches like that, get in and out and do all my updates. I don't have issues with it. You know, like before it would, I could launch it, it wouldn't launch full screen. So I'd have to constantly go in and change the control type from desktop, from controller or auto, because it's where auto sets. Auto, which knows whether I'm on desktop or not, to desktop so I can maneuver about and then switch it back to controller. I don't have to do that. It launches full screen, easy access, it comes and goes just like that. There's no issues whatsoever with it. Um, and then the quick setting bar on the left side here, you know, I don't have any issues with that launching. So if I want to change things, like turn on RSR, or if I want to change the control type, or really just about anything that I want to be able to do, I'm able to do easily and effortlessly with this. Like literally, it can, like literally, it launches effortlessly. So I don't have any issues with that. Currently, I got a game running, so I'm like, oh, I forgot I was playing that. I was playing Chalice of Adam. But yeah, everything I want to do, like, you know, changing the operating mode to, you know, the control mode, game profiles, you know, keyboard, show desktop, you know, everything I need it to do, this thing does, and it does so well. And that's really the testament of it having these months to iron out the kinks. So anytime a new device comes out, say something from Alienware, something from Acer with the Predator line, right? Or from Razer. The first product is always going to have that software issue. So we have to give them a little grace and work with them. And that also entails them working with us and taking our feedback so that it can be a better experience overall. Now, the one thing I want to say, what I don't like about this is the fact that you have literally 3 different softwares that you have to update. You have to update Windows and get all your Windows updates. You also have to do updates via the MyASUS app, which is annoying, but that's where you're going to get a lot of your BIOS and stuff like that. You got to go through that. So you make sure you test and you know, check for updates. You also have to go and make sure that everything in Armory Crate is updated because that's a whole nother area. Now, why they could make it to where you just get your updates through Windows, or you can just do your updates on Windows and My Armory Crate, I don't know. I don't understand why they didn't do it like that. So it's annoying that you have to go through 3 different softwares and update 3 different softwares to update everything from the BIOS to firmware to your Windows updates and all the different functionalities this has. It's very annoying, but it works, but it's annoying. And that's one of the other things. Oh yeah, well, before I forget it, I want to talk about 2 other things on here, or 3 other things. I want to talk about the speakers. The speakers on this are, oh my god, they're so loud. And it's because they're front firing, so they hit you. The driver in them is really good. So like everything you play, you know, from retro games to modern AAA titles, everything has that crisp crunch that it needs. And it never sounds tinny, you know, everything sounds very good. Like these can pretty much, if you're in a room like this living room here, like I don't have anything on. If I were to turn this on, this is gonna fill the whole room. That's how loud this is. These are the loudest speakers I've experienced, and they're great. And I love that they're front firing. Um, other thing I want to talk about is the fingerprint sensor. The, you know, being able to put your finger there and just quickly unlock. I love that. It's the only between this and the Legion Guard. I'm not going to bring up the you know, any of the INEO devices or anything like that because I don't care. I don't have those. things you can walk in the store and buy is this Legion Go, and some places you can walk into GameStop and buy a Steam Deck. So stuff you can just walk in and buy. I love that functionality on that, and this being the only one that has that. Now, quickly also want to talk about the external GPU. So if you want to get the one from Asus that's meant for this device, also for the laptop line, the ROG line, you can get that, and you can put in, if you want to put in a 40 series card, 30 series card, 20 series card, you can do that. And this will be as powerful as your desktop. With that type of functionality, and everything you need to do will be right there. And I can't argue with it. I can't say it's a bad deal, because it's not at all. It's a great deal. But some people are going to be like, no, it's not a great deal, because you can just build one. Not everyone has the capability of just building a computer. Like, if you live where I'm at here in Hawaii, like, you can't just easily build a computer, because getting parts here is damn near impossible for a lot of the bigger things like power supplies and such like that. And so pre-builds is pretty much where you have to go. So it's to each their own. For some people, it's great. For some others, it's not. For me personally, I think it's fine, and that's an option there. That out of the way, I want to talk about when it comes to maneuvering around windows. Now, this doesn't have touchpads. You have to maneuver around using the right analog stick, and then your left and right click are the right bumper and right trigger. A lot of people don't like maneuvering around windows with that. And I personally, I could see both sides. I can see people being against it. I can also see people saying it's not that big of a deal. I've gotten so used to it at this point where I'm like, it's not that big of a deal. But I can understand where the issues can really crop up, especially if you are connecting this to a TV and then you want to just sit down and you got to run through a game such as Batman and Arkham Asylum that has a launcher you have to do. So you need to launch that first and then connect it to your TV, unless you've got a keyboard and mouse and you can handle. And that's one of the things that for most cases you're going to need a keyboard and mouse on standby, because you're using an external controller. That's going to be a bit of a headache, just to keep that in mind. Even with the Rikiri Pro controller, that's still not the solution that you're ultimately wanting when you're docking this. So keep that in mind. Sorry, I'm still getting over the effects of COVID. But anyways, um, I yeah, maneuvering windows, I think it's fine. You get used to it. No biggie. At least to me. But I'm someone who's used to it. Other than that, full access to Windows. Do you need an antivirus on this? Not really. I wouldn't put one on here unless you're going to be, going to the Pornhub or something like that. Other than that, I think everything on this is fine. I think this is a great device. It's probably at this point going to be the cheapest you can get. With a caveat on that, if you want to get an open box, you can get an open box version of this as cheap as like 300 something that I've seen. And it's just because people bought it and returned it because of negative reviews or negative experiences. I mean, even if you're not going to get an open box, sale prices for this are as low as like 600 for the holidays. So that's still a hell of a steal. There is a lower end model, which I don't bring up because I don't recommend anyone get that. It's $100 less. But why would you buy it? Well, actually, no. It's the same price. It's $599. Tinker with like the
the TDP.
Yeah,
or if
why
I
would
want
you
to
buy
tinker
that?
with graphic settings, I can. But for the most
I
part,
can't recommend
everything
that
runs
one.
better.
Don't
And yeah,
buy
the
that
battery
one.
life could be a lot better.
But yeah,
But
everything you
you
want,
have to
Game
keep in
Pass,
mind
all
higher
your PC
refresh rate
launchers,
because
indie
double what the
games,
Steam Deck is. It's
custom
a higher
games,
resolution
everything
screen
runs
as well.
perfectly on
So
this.
you got to factor those
And
things
yeah,
in.
you
And
know, this
yeah,
has
you do have things that run in the background.
great support.
It's best to
They're just not
launch
very talkative
your
about
whatever your launchers
when
are
issues
from the
do
armory
pop up.
crate because it
But
kills all the
overall,
background things that are
like
running.
if you do have
If
an
you're just
issue,
running
if you need
everything
to
from the
arm me, I'll
desktop,
take care of it.
you're going to run into
I can say
issues
that
where
much.
this is going
Other
to
than that,
just have
6 months
things
later,
running in the background. Whereas
still
if you
love this
run everything
device.
through the
Still
armory crate
highly
SE,
recommend it,
it's going to kill
especially
everything
now
off in the
with the
background and just
quiet
focus
fixing of the micro
specifically
SD
on
card
what you're
issue.
playing. So do that. That's something
But
I
even
would
with
highly
that,
recommend.
just I would say get something like internal drive. And if you're not familiar with how to do that, there's so many videos on YouTube of doing that. But all in all, the ROG Ally, still recommend it. Still one of my favorite devices of 2023. And yeah, that's my 6 months later review of this. So what do you guys think? What are your thoughts on the ROG Ally? Are you still rocking with it? Do you still like it? Do you prefer the Legion Go or the Steam Deck or Steam Deck OLED over it, or any of the million Ionia devices? Whatever your thoughts are, let's go ahead and get the comments going in the comment section down below on YouTube, or if you want, on the podcasting platforms that this is on, because you can leave feedback there too. And if you want to pick one of these up, I will have affiliate links down below as well as pinned to this video so you can get it. No additional cost to you, but what it's kickback. It helps keep the lights on. And also thank you to this video sponsor, EWIN Racing, because hey, got to keep the lights on, got to pay the bills, right? It is what it is. All that being said, I hope to see you guys in the next one. Hope you enjoyed it. Do all the stuff that YouTube likes and all the stuff that podcasting platforms like. And yeah, gotta get back to some gaming. I'll see you guys on the next one. Stay safe, be blessed, have aloha, and I'll catch you on the next episode. Ahui ho. And for those of you who don't know what ahui ho means, that's Hawaiian for see you later, goodbye. So yeah, ahui ho.